Hey everybody, Curtis Bryan here with the Citrus Insider. Today I'm going to be doing a interview with what would have been the current county commissioner, Rebecca Bays, who is running for re-election this election cycle in District 4. Unfortunately, when I sent the invitations out to Ms. Bays, I did not receive a response. I have been told behind the scenes that she did get it and she just did not respond back to me for whatever reason, which is fine. I told them that they're allowed to decline it if they so chose to do so. However, I did tell them that if they did choose to decline it, that I would continue with this interview series. I will ask you guys the questions, or ask her the questions, or pose to you guys the questions what I would have asked her had she been here, and given her the opportunity to answer those questions directly to you guys. But since she's not here, as you can see, I'm still going to ask questions. So I'm going to talk to you guys. I'm going to put out there the questions I would have asked and let you guys make inferences to whatever those answers you think would have been. So I've got a couple of sheets here that we'll kind of go through as we're doing this. I would have asked her about her last 4 years. She's been in office till 8 years. Some of the accomplishments that she's had, things like that. So allow her to give that opportunity to explain what she's done for Citrus County. But during the conversation, I would have asked the hard questions. That's the purpose of this. This interview was to ask the hard questions that people have been asking about things that are going on in Citrus County that other entities aren't asking, and that was the purpose of this interview. So, speaking of that, we're going to jump right in. Ms. Bays has signs throughout Citrus County. On those signs, it says "Facts Matter" is the catchphrase, and you reference several things that the board has done while you've been on it. So, different grants you've gotten, different road resurfacing, things like that. What have you done specifically for Citrus County the past 4 years that's been your initiative? And the reason I asked that is a lot of those things were board initiatives. Those were, the board voted for this, the board did this, someone else might have brought it forward and she just said a yes vote or whatever it was. So I wanted to know specifically what was her initiatives in the last 4 years and what she's brought to the board that's been approved. What is the one thing you've been most proud of during your term? So what's the one opportunity or whatever it was, project that you brought forward or thing that you've done? You often cite how active you are in the community. What things are you doing and how involved are you? Last night at the Chronicle Forum, you had mentioned that the state should be in control of data center regulation. You often complain about the state having too much control and power over local issues via preemption. And what that means is the state comes in and says, we're doing this, and this, and the county has no say in what that looks like. Why would you support the states having control over data center regulation versus local control? If that were to be true, the county would have no control over stopping a data center from going in. So any data center application, if the state controls that means that Holder Industrial Park, for instance, the state would make the determination on Holder Industrial Park and not the local government. So I wanted her clarification on why she thinks that's a good idea. You flipped your vote on the Pine Ridge Golf Course from a no in 2024 to a yes in 2025. What changed in your opinion between the two votes, and what was the reason for your flip? In April 2024, you voted against the Betts Farm amendment to the contract that allowed the closing time to be indefinite until all approvals have been received by the county or from the county. Yet you had an opportunity to cancel the contracts, and you did, only to walk it back a month later. Why did you make that change? What reason was for you to flip the vote from canceling the contract to no longer canceling the contract? In March 2025, a local news organization brought to light your actions regarding the 491 appropriations request with the state that did not follow our prior processes and procedures. It was funding request, and it did not follow the funding request that we typically do going through the BOCC. Can you explain why you did it the way you did without any board approvals and working with a former county commissioner turned lobbyist and a state senator from another district? In other words, why did you do this process the way that you did it, and why did you go through other people rather than going through our lobbyists and our senator here at Citrus County in Tallahassee? In response to the public outrage for this, you admitted that you could have done things differently. Quote unquote, I messed up, I am sorry, give me 50 lashes with a wet noodle. Do you regret that comment? Should commissioners be held to a higher standard? And the reason I asked that is there was a lot of public backlash. A lot of people said things that were going on behind the scenes. Again, all this stuff happened in text messages. Nobody knew any of this stuff was happening. And yet you said, give me 50 lashes with a wet noodle, which kind of, was a slap on the wrist, so to speak. Over the years, you have stated that you wanted to find more cost-effective measures to reduce costs, what specifically do you have in mind for that? So last night you had mentioned some efficiencies in government and things like that, and you wanted to see more efficiencies, but we didn't explain what those efficiencies were. So what are those things that you would present to the board to lower costs? And whatever your answer would be to that, I wanted to know why you haven't prioritized that over the past 4 years. So you've been a commissioner for 4 years, and now all of a sudden we're trying to prioritize these initiatives and efficiency. So why hasn't that been a thing the last 4 years? And if it has been, what have you done to bring that forward? We talk about wanting developers to pay their fair share of local growth that we're seeing. You had mentioned that the county had raised impact fees. We've removed roads from public funding, among other things, to hold developers accountable to paying for these things. But in your prior service to the board between 2010 and 2014, you voted to opt out of transportation concurrency. For those not familiar with that, what that means is that as a project is built, if there was transportation concurrency, much like sewer and water concurrency, things like that, the developer has to prove that there's capacity on the roads for their project. So if their project brings in 1,000 cars, they have to show that there's capacity on roads for 1,000 cars. If there's not, they have to pay for the infrastructure improvements to allow 1,000 additional cars to be on that road. So road widening, or paving for roads over in front of their development, things like that. So she opted out, and the state gave us the option to opt out in early mid 2000s, around 2010, and so the county opted out around that time to opt out of transportation concurrency. Since that time, growth has exploded in Citrus County, and we cannot require them to pay for concurrency any longer, losing hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. You have yet to propose a way to get that money back. What is your plan to start getting developers to pay for the growth that is continuing to come? So we have all this growth coming, yet they're not paying for roads, aside from impact fees and things like that. Is it fair to say that the decision to opt out of concurrency has been one of the reasons that we're looking at a $750 million backlog in road funding? Do you agree with the prior board's decision to include drainage retention areas and buffers as open space in the calculations for development? This was an LDC change made in 2022 prior to your election to the board. What the board then decided was there was projects that were coming forward. The projects require open space requirements. I believe it's 20% open space, which means that if there's 100 acres, 20 acres have to be open space. Developers were complaining that the drainage retention ponds and things like setbacks in buffer zones between different uses did not count at the time towards that open space requirement. So they were asking the county to allow those things. They were asking for deviations to the land development code to allow the retention ponds and the buffers to count as the green space in the project. The reason they were doing this was it allows them to have higher density projects. And so I wanted to know if she would support bringing it back to the original land development code to increase the open space requirements by adding or removing the drainage retention areas as part of that calculation. Many small businesses in the county feel that the BOCC is not a fan of their businesses, rather supporting larger out-of-town businesses that goes to the larger retail, national companies, things like that are coming. What do you feel you will do to support the small businesses in Citrus County and help make them thrive? Homelessness is a rising issue in the county. What steps do you plan to take if you're reelected to help reduce the issue and support those currently experiencing it? What is your plan to increase the affordable housing options in Citrus County? What do you consider to be the most important issue facing Citrus County in the next 4 years, and what will you do to address it? We talk about smart growth. What is the definition of smart growth for you? Developers and builders are major contributors to your campaign. We all know that growth leads to more jobs in the building industry. What do you feel about the optics of this? And by that I mean, you're supported by developers, you're supported by builders, all these people are contributing to your campaign. They all benefit from growth. So people are questioning whether you are making votes for the citizens of Citrus County or to help your friends and people who are donating to your campaign. So what are the optics of accepting those dollars? What do you feel that is done? If there's a project that comes to the board where one of your donors is involved, are you, one, willing to make that known publicly prior to the meeting? And two, willing to step aside from the votes as Florida law allows for quasi-judicial proceedings for the potential appearance of bias? So we've seen throughout the years that donors come and spend thousands of dollars on different people's campaigns, and then they have a project that comes to the board later on. While again not illegal, the optics of that are bad, because now they're voting on a project that directly benefits one of their donors. So people have questioned whether that's something there. So I was curious as to what her view is of that. This one here, there was a picture shared with me while you were at dinner with Holly Davis, Ruthie Schleybaugh, and the lobbyist from Southern Group, as well as a representative from Metro Development Group, which is the ones that did the Tuscany project. I made a phone call to you and I asked you about this picture, and you did confirm that you were there and that was you in the picture. It was well known at the time that Metro was bringing this Tuscany project. It was before the PDC prior to this meeting. However, it was postponed for the BOCC votes and temporarily paused during this time. But again, it was a project that was known to the county. Why would you risk quasi-judicial issues and other optics issues by having dinner with this group? What were you told prior to this dinner, and why would you accept the invitation? So I'm curious as to what they told her, because she told me that she was surprised that those people were involved in this dinner and that the other commissioners were there and all of that, is what she expressed to me. So I was curious as to what she was told about this dinner and why she accepted the invitation. The Tuscany project was later approved and you were the deciding vote. It was a 3-2 vote and you were the swing vote for this. Did this dinner have anything to do with your decision on that vote? So I wanted to know point blank of, did you go do a site visit after this? Did you talk to them about development projects and things like that for there? You often tout your connections to Tallahassee as a reason to vote for you. You've often said that you're experienced and you have all these connections to Tallahassee that helps Citrus County, things like that. So I want to know, how has this directly helped Citrus County? Has there been projects that have come along because of these connections, because you're able to pick up the phone to make these phone calls to Tallahassee? And what specifically have you done with these connections to help improve Citrus County? There were several text messages and emails between you and others regarding Wright Rudder. This goes back a couple years. What involvement did you have with the termination of their contract, which you ultimately voted for? So back in 2025, I believe it was, about a year ago, the county terminated the contract. You voted to uphold the termination in a vote, and you were involved behind the scenes with various text messages and emails related to the airports and things like that. So curious of what your involvement was with that contract. Why has that changed recently when you voted to offer to drop the lawsuit? So again, you voted to terminate the contract, you voted to approve that termination, and then just recently you voted to opt out or offered to drop the countersuit to evict them from the airport. So I was curious about that. Blazing Golia has identified $30 million in wasteful spending in Citrus County. Do you agree with this assessment? And where do you propose to cut spending to eliminate this wasteful spending? So I'm looking for an answer of where you would look to cut those tax dollars from the budgets that has been identified as waste. So again, this interview series was meant to give her an opportunity to answer some of those questions that have been brought out in the public, some of the optics issues that have been there, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to address you guys directly for those things. But again, she did not reply back to my request to do so. So you guys are left with this video of the questions I would have asked her had she been here, and no answers from her to those things. And again, maybe she comes back, watches this video, comes back with answers to those questions. Maybe not, who knows. But I wanted you guys to have those questions in your mind as you guys are going through with this election cycle, and have these things in your head of things to consider when making a decision to vote. And whether these things are important to you or not, have been expressed to me several times from several different people. So that's it for this interview series. Again, check out the other videos, the other candidates, and remember that this one as well is open to everyone in Citrus County to vote. It's not a closed primary, so regardless if you're a registered Democrat, Independent, or Republican, you are able to vote in this election. It also does not matter what district you live in. So this is District 4, but anybody in the county is able to vote for this race, regardless if you live in that district or not. So again, Curtis Bryant here with the Citrus Insider. Check out the other videos and other election coverage that we have.